jamming out to the music there. It's Kevin Kenny. This is the Build series live from New York City. And this is like my daily humility check is introducing our guests here on the show because I feel so unaccomplished when I list off what they've done. Ryan Bingham is here. He is an Oscar Award winner, a Grammy Award winner, and he's got a brand new album out right now called American Love Song. Let's make some noise for Ryan. Just enjoying your music here in the studio. Thanks for stopping by, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.
First ever time on Build.
Uh-huh.
We're happy to have you here. From Texas originally. I want to start there. Okay. I heard Odessa and Midland, and why that piqued my interest. I mean, you moved around a lot, and we'll get into that. But I heard Odessa and Midland. That's like Friday Night Lights country.
It is.
Yeah, of a Friday Night Lights fam. But how much time did you spend in Texas? Because you know, a big part of your story, of course, is how nomadic your childhood was.
Quite a bit. When I was really young, my family moved out to Bakersfield, California for a few years. And then we moved back to that Midland, Odessa area when I was probably, I think, 11 or so. And then from there, I kind of continued to be in Texas for quite a while, just moving around all of those towns from there to Houston and Laredo and then Austin, Texas and Fort Worth and kind of everywhere.
Right. I mean, before you even get into your identity as an artist, how do you find your identity as a person when you move around that much? I grew up in New Jersey, the same town, like almost my entire life, right? So that's like my core. That's like where my roots are. But when you move around, how do you find your identity as a person?
It was difficult, you know. I think I come from a ranching family, and my grandfather was a cowboy, and my uncle and my dad. And I got into going to these rodeos when I was a little kid. And so I had a cowboy hat on and boots, and I would travel around. But every town, you know, was in Texas especially, is very, you know, kind of culturally diverse, different areas and things like that. So it was constantly changing, and I was constantly, you know, trying to adapt to my situation and my new environment. And would kind of take who I was wherever I went. But at the same time, all those places kind of made me who I am today, you know.
It had to make you incredibly empathetic, don't you think? Because you would have to, like, I would imagine if you're moving around all these different neighborhoods and all these different, you know, communities, you'd have to probably try to understand all these people. That had to inform your songwriting once you started making music, right?
It did a lot, and just kind of people that I would meet in towns. You know, it's always being a new kid in a new town, you know, and kind of trying to you would make friends with whoever would want to be friends with you, you know? Right. And it was usually the kid that didn't have many friends, you know? So, you know, you'd kind of roll around like that. And I remember, you know, coming home, and I'd always have kind of some interesting characters coming home with me after school and things like that. And just, you just would fit in where you could fit in.
I read some quote of yours that was along the lines of, you know, maybe the only consistent thing you ever had was like your cowboy hat, right? It's probably more symbolic than it is literal, but it reminded me of one of my favorite Steve Earle songs called Fort Worth Blues, where he says, you know, you always said the highway was your home, but that's just because you don't know where you're traveling to, right?
Yeah.
Do you relate to that at all?
Yeah, totally. And like I said, yeah, just kind of being uprooted and not really having something consistent, you know, and trying to find something to hold on to and take with me everywhere I was. That was just something that it was something you had to kind of deal with at every stage of that.
Right. I mean, you have some wild stories from your youth. You got in a gang fight as a kid. Is that true?
Well, a lot of that stuff. You know, a lot of the kind of places I would move to, not necessarily on the nicest side of town and different things like that. A lot of violence, a lot of gang violence, a lot of poverty, things like that.
Right.
And that was just something that was. I didn't know it, you know, anything different at the time. You know, we were always kind of dealing, especially going to new schools all the time. You know, that was something you had to confront. I mean, nothing like what kids are having to deal with these days. But yeah, it was definitely something you had to think about. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's almost a consistency in and of itself, right? Like that wrong side of the tracks. Throughout your story. Very
much. That's I had a song called "The South Side of Heaven," one of my first songs I ever wrote, and that's very much what that is all about. You know. Yeah, so that's something that you definitely walking into a new place and you kind of, you know, you see people in their groups and different sounds and you're just like, you know, where do I kind of go to fit in to find some safe territory, you know?
Yeah. How hard is that to shake growing up like that, right? Like that idea that, like, 'cause you had to internalize it, right? Like the wrong side of the tracks, kind of feeling like an outsider. Here you are, though, you know, of course, years later, maybe even decades later, this hugely successful musician. Have you been able to sort of you know what I'm trying to say here, where now it seems as though you're on the other side of that coin? Does it feel like that for you, or are you always going to be that kid?
I don't know. I think I always feel like that kid, you know, and I always relate to that more and I identify with that more to those kids, you know. It's just very much who I am, and even now I still travel so much playing music, and I have this opportunity to travel around the world and experience how people live in different places, and kind of just be a witness to the world spinning around. And I think I'm always paying attention to that kind of stuff, and that's very much what I'm writing about.
Right.
Definitely the world I'm seeing around me.
Well, this record really, I mean, it's sort of born out of you being an observer, right, of the times we're in and just the state of everything.
Yeah, it is. It's very layered, you know. It's about growing up and all the different places that I lived in and the experiences that I had growing up, and also current events and things that have been happening over the past couple of years as well. So definitely different songs are kind of layered with all of that.
What's enabled you as an artist to make your most layered work yet? Because I know that's been said a bunch of times about American Love Song, is that it is the most layered you've ever been as an artist. What's led you to that, or being able to be that layered?
You know, maybe kind of what you're talking about, moving around a lot, and just maybe growing up some and kind of becoming a little less insecure.
Yeah.
And kind of finding that sense of identity and realizing that I'm not just kind of this one kid from this little town in West Texas, that I'm kind of a blend of all of these different places, and that's who I am. I've worn a lot of different hats and, you know, different shoes over the years, and have had to kind of blend into different places, and that's kind of who I am, and I think I'm just a lot more comfortable with that these days, and I can maybe write more about the world around me than not so much my own internal kind of struggle. You know, a lot of the songs when I was a kid writing were very just kind of very kind of therapeutic, dealing with my own things, you know, trying to make sense of the world around me. And now it seems to be I'm kind of writing more outward about other people as well, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Did you almost feel early on you may have been trapped within yourself and your own issues as an artist?
I think, yeah, I kind of got on my own at quite a young age, and writing songs too. I didn't have a lot of people to talk to about, especially some of those things that you didn't really want to talk to people about.
Right.
And so writing songs was a way for me to get that stuff off my chest and have those conversations. And even if I didn't really play them for anybody, because a lot of those songs I didn't really intend to play them for people. It was just so I could sit in a room and close the door and kind of say that stuff out loud. And it was very cathartic, and just would make me feel better at the end of the day, you know, to get that stuff out. And so it wasn't until later on that, you know, all this stuff started happening.
Came together.
Yeah.
Is there a power in that, though, making music that you don't anticipate anybody hearing?
Maybe, you know, I mean, I think it's, you're kind of tapping into some brutal honesty, you know, with just some kind of, with feelings that I think a lot of people have in common. You know, I think we all share those experiences, and I think one thing I've learned over the years, or what kind of I've gotten out of this whole thing of why I enjoy to continue to do this, because sometimes the songs can be a bit difficult to play, you know, but whenever you can sit in a room with all these people and talk about these things and kind of share that experience, it leaves me with feeling like there's a little more love in the room today than there was maybe yesterday.
Yeah.
You know?
What song in particular comes to mind when you think of a song that's really tough to play?
The Weary Kind, a song I wrote for the Oscars, is always a really tough song to play. That song was really, I wrote it about my father. And, well, I mean, from reading the script of the movie, you know, I'm sitting here reading about this character, and I'm like, oh, man, this guy's just like my old man, you know? And I just kind of wrote that song about my experiences growing up with him and a lot of other kind of characters like that in my life, you know?
Right.
And he passed away right after the Oscars and all of that stuff, and a lot of people didn't realize that. They're like, oh, well, you won this Oscar, and, you know, your life is just great, and aren't you happy, and all this stuff. And it was just one of the toughest kind of times in my life as well. And so it took a while to get to where I could play that song comfortably every night, all the time, you know?
Right. Do you think of that time still as, I mean, of course, a dark period in your life, but have you been able to sort of, I don't know, recontextualize that achievement by now?
Yeah, I have. And, you know, obviously I'm very honored to have received that award and humbled by it. And I feel very grateful for that experience. But at the same time, writing songs for me is kind of about something else besides kind of accolades and winning awards and things like that. You know,
Right.
I'm kind of not looking for that.
Right.
It's like what I said. It's about it started from this very personal thing that kind of helped me survive, I think.
Yeah.
And it's still very much. I still approach songwriting like that, you know, except for hopefully growing up a little bit more and kind of a little grounded and all of that stuff, and married now and have kids and kind of moved my life forward to a stage. It's been a lot more enjoyable and encompassing more things in my music instead of just writing about the hard times that I've experienced. So, kind of broke through that.
Is there, you've been through so much in your life, of course, even as an active musician, be it, now you're a father, you're, of course, a husband, losing your parents. What has been, if you can pinpoint it, the most transitional moment, the biggest before and after for you as an artist? Out of all those times in your life?
I don't know. Somebody asked me, like, they were talking about the success and things like that, and I was like, the most successful thing that I've done is meet my wife and get married and start a family. I lost so much of my family at a young age, and to lose kind of your people like that at a young age and kind of be out there, and I didn't know if I would ever get that back, and with my kids and my family that I've grown now, I've very much gotten a lot of that back. So I feel like that's probably one of the most successful things that I've done.
Absolutely. How are you able to marry sort of, not to call you a cowboy, right? But this sort of, this highwayman, this traveling musician, that is such a different lifestyle than the idea of a traditional family man, right? How are you personally able to bridge those two things?
I'm learning.
Yeah,
as I go. I obviously I don't have some good examples to go off of, but my wife is a wonderful woman and very strong and is as much of a role model to me as anybody. So I'm pretty thankful to have her together raising these kids, and it's just just going off kind of my instincts and my gut feelings and. Going with it.
The theme of layers applies to a couple songs here that you wrote about your wife on the record too, right? Mm-hmm. Can you run through those?
Yeah, there's a song called "Lover Girl" that I wrote about her at the end, and one called "Love Don't Let Me Down." Those are pretty straightforward, just kind of love songs that I wrote about her, and at the same time, I feel in the world today, the kind of role models that are out there are not very inspiring, and there's so much hateful kind of rhetoric in the world. I felt inclined to write about love and kind of promote a little bit more of that with this album.
Yeah. There is, I don't want to say a political slant, but there is commentary, of course, on the current times.
Yeah, totally.
Does that scare you at all as an artist, right? Who's, this is your career, and just the fear of potentially alienating someone you may personally disagree with it, but as a fan, do you ever worry about alienating that person by taking a stance on something?
No, I don't anymore. I don't really think this is a time to be complicit, with the kind of things that are being said and promoted out there in the world. And I think it just kind of enables the oppressors a bit more if you kind of sit idly and be silent. So I think it's a really crucial time to get out there and have a message. And I think about, some of those little towns that I lived in and being a young kid and not having a lot of outside influence, and the only people you could look up to are your kind of surrounding community and family and things like that. And music really kind of took me out a lot of that stuff, and especially some of the songs by Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie and Bill Withers. Woody and Bill Withers in particularly, some of those songs that they wrote, like Lean on Me and This Land Is Your Land, were just such profound songs that I don't really feel are alienating, They unite more than anything. I remember being a kid in school, and those were some of the first songs that I ever sang. And so I kind of try to use some of those examples when I'm talking about that stuff and try to promote more of a message of unity than anything.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I don't know. I feel like we all have to get out there and fight the good fight. At some
Absolutely.
point.
And you certainly are with the new record. You bring up Dylan. You co-produced this or produced this alongside Charlie Sexton, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and Charlie Sexton, if you don't know at home, has been a long-time touring musician with Dylan. Did he tell you any good Bob stories?
Oh, he's got a couple.
Yeah.
You know?
Any you can share? Any like come to mind?
Oh, not really. You know, I don't want to go down that road.
But why Charlie for this record?
Man, he grew up kind of some of those similar areas that I did, and I very much wanted this record and these songs to kind of represent the landscape and the geography and kind of some of those, you know, different cultural places around, especially around Texas that I lived in, and so a lot of the things that I was hearing in my head, I knew that I wouldn't have a hard time explaining that to Charlie because he was familiar with those places and we had a lot of the same influences. So when I sent him some of the demos and was kind of talking about it, and he's like, you know, what are you hearing with this record? And I'm like, man, like the country blues and, you know, Southeast Texas, like Lightning Hopkins over here, and from my experiences in Laredo on the border and the mariachi music and Texas tornadoes and different. So like, you know, I didn't have to explain that. He just kind of like, oh, I know the guys who can play that, and we can make this thing, make this happen. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's get to some audience questions right now. The first is going to come from right behind me.
Gotcha. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So I see through your work you explore just the general idea of both American identity, and it also influences just your general music qualities. I'm curious, what does it mean to you to be an American artist specifically?
I don't know. I haven't thought about that much, you know. I think I feel a bit of an obligation to kind of reflect the times, and maybe just because of the influences that I've had growing up, like references like Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan and Bill Withers and some of those people, that those songs had such a profound impact on me personally. But I don't necessarily think of it like, you know, as just being an American musician. I'm just kind of another kid out there singing some songs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. We have time for one more. It'll come from over here as well.
Hi. This is an online question from BuildSeries.com. Someone wants to ask, as a musician, do you feel the need to be defined into a single box or venture out into different genres?
You know, I'm influenced by a lot of different kinds of music, so I would have to say, you know, yeah, I definitely don't want to be kind of pigeonholed into one kind of area, because I definitely have a lot of different influences, and especially with this record, you know, me and Charlie were talking about, you know, the blues and country and jazz and zydeco and mariachi music, all those kind of different things from that we grew up hearing around where we were living. So we wanted to infuse a lot of those different kinds of styles in that.
Cool, thank you.
Great question. Very eclectic record. Ryan, they're telling me we're out of time, so thank you so much for stopping
you.
by. Where can we keep up to date with you, though? Because I know you're doing shows and the record's out, but social media, are you active on there?
Got all of that stuff, yeah.
Beautiful. Is it just at Ryan Bingham?
Yeah, just
Oh,
at Ryan
beautiful.
Bingham,
Nice and simple. Guys, one more time for Ryan Bingham.
Thank you.